The STARHAWK Earth Exploration Vehicle explored Oshkosh AirVenture 2024 and discovered 10 ways ATC can make flying to AirVenture easier and safer. Imagine the sky filled with thousands of aircraft of every shape and size, all converging on one airport in Wisconsin. Welcome to the Experimental Aircraft Association's Oshkosh AirVenture Fly In Convention, a week-long celebration every summer of aviation in all its forms, attracting nearly 1 million enthusiasts from around the world. It's like a giant family reunion for anyone with a passion for flight. With 10,000 aircraft flying in for the event, the Oshkosh Airport is transformed into the busiest in the world, and with its unique air traffic control procedures, it can make flying in and out as exciting for pilots and controllers as the convention itself. The special AirVenture ATC procedures that make this possible are the result of decades of refinement since the earliest EAA fly-in conventions. The challenges of coordinating the safe flight of thousands of aircraft with a wide range of speeds and pilot skills, from ultralights to high-speed jets, in and out of a single airport within a week, is daunting and unmatched by any other aviation event. Nothing is perfect, though, and AirVenture's accident and incident history reminds all to continuously look for improvements. Are today's procedures ready for the next AirVenture? Can they be made simpler, more accurate, and safer for both pilots and controllers? My wife Allison and I flew into AirVenture 2024 via the famous Fisk arrival for the first time, and our experience revealed some opportunities for refining these mostly excellent ATC procedures. The purpose of this video is to share our insights with the FAA's AirVenture ATC team and the EAA staff, so they can consider them for future updates to the system's procedures. I'm Valen, and my wife Allison and I are longtime EAA members. I started flying at age 17 and completed a university professional pilot training program. Allison is a student pilot and helpful co-pilot, though when you see our flight videos, you may think she's a flight instructor. For both of us, our professional careers were as NASA aerospace engineers, so-called rocket scientists, focused on human spaceflight systems development and operations. Our careers spanned the Space Shuttle program, International Space Station, and for me, also NASA's Commercial Crew and Cargo programs. Today we are enjoying retirement and flying the high-performance experimental airplane we built, customized from the basic Lancer Legacy kit. We named it the STARHAWK Earth Exploration Vehicle, referencing our space exploration careers. STARHAWK is a small airplane with only 2 seats and about a 25-foot wingspan. Most airplanes in its size class are like little 2-seat Cessna 152 trainers that fast cruise at about 107 knots. So the unfamiliar are always very surprised to see STARHAWK cruising at over 230 knots and fly its final approach to landing at about 100 knots. The cruise speeds of Lancer Legacy set up for racing are close to 350 knots. So with STARHAWK's fast-biased flight envelope, we've always flown into AirVenture by the faster speed warbird arrival for best compatibility, a maximum 250 knots starting speed limit that steps down to 150 knots by Warbird Island. The Lancer Owners and Builders Organization, LOBO, had worked with the EAA for approval for the faster Lancer airplane models to fly the Warbird arrival. So why, for AirVenture 2024, did we finally fly STARHAWK on the Fisk arrival? where some of the airplanes are at full throttle to fly the Fisk arrival's minimum speed of only 90 knots. First, because flying the famous Fisk arrival is classic Oshkosh lore, a rite of passage, and yet in all our AirVenture years, we'd never flown it. Second, STARHAWK's approach speed should be compatible with the Fisk arrival's faster high track, flown at 135 knots. That is our target speed on downwind after all. And finally, we'd recently added cameras to STARHAWK to begin documenting some of our flights with the plan to eventually create a social media channel to share those flights. So we wanted footage to help other pilots, including first-timers, prepare for flying this famous arrival. We didn't expect we'd find anything that would motivate the creation of this video, with suggestions for further refinement of AirVenture's mostly awesome ATC procedures. But here we are, sharing those thoughts. I hope this context is helpful. The AirVenture ATC team and EAA staff know these procedures intimately. If you're less familiar, here's a brief summary based on the FAA's Oshkosh 2024 notice. I'll use 3D modeling and animation to help illustrate how it all works. The modeling is all to scale, except for the big paper airplanes with 800-foot wingspans, so they can be seen from far away. How AirVenture ATC works, a quick look. The airport. The Experimental Aircraft Association's AirVenture Fly In Convention is held the last week of every July at Oshkosh, Wisconsin's Whitman Airport, just west of Lake Winnebago. Most aircraft land at any of 3 hard surface runways in operation, 1 north runway and 2 south runways. 2 short runways between the main runways are closed during the convention. The ultralight and home-built rotorcraft operate off a grass strip on the south side. The Pioneer Airport, on the northwest side of the airport and adjacent to the EAA Museum, has a grass runway where helicopter tour flights operate and transient helicopters base during the convention. Special flight procedures. Special flight procedures are implemented from the Friday before until the Monday after the 7-day AirVenture convention. Temporary flight restrictions, TFRs, with a 5 nautical mile radius from the Oshkosh Airport are active for the afternoon air shows on each day of the convention. There are also night show TFRs as well on Wednesday and Saturday nights from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Thousands of attendees camp at their airplanes or in RVs on airport grounds at Camp Scholler. To provide a sleep-friendly environment, 11 days before the opening of the convention, Oshkosh is closed to all arriving aircraft from 8 p.m. until 7 a.m. There are several different VFR arrival procedures designed for aircraft of various types and speeds. Fisk VFR arrival. The arrival procedure most airplanes use is called the Fisk VFR arrival. It's famous. The Fisk arrival begins many miles southwest of the Oshkosh Airport. There's a defined path to the airport along a chain of lakes that pilots are to follow. Pilots self-organize onto this path with no ATC help into a single file line headed to Oshkosh. Pilots are to follow the airplane ahead of them, staying no closer than 1/2 mile. If they cannot stay safely in trail of the airplane ahead, they must break out of the line and return to the starting point to re-enter. When the arrival is very busy, it begins 44 nautical miles southwest of Oshkosh at a waypoint called Endeavor, the name of a nearby bridge. When it's not too busy, it typically starts about 24 nautical miles southwest of Oshkosh at the Green Lake Waypoint, named after the adjacent lake to the north. For moderately busy periods, there's a starting point between Endeavor and Green Lake called Puckaway Lake, which it is adjacent to. For the occasional extremely busy periods, the Fisk arrival has even begun over the Portage Airport, 12 nautical miles south of the Endeavor Waypoint, which, as I said, is 44 nautical miles away. The Fisk arrival's active starting point is announced on the Oshkosh Airport's arrival ATIS broadcast. In flying this Fisk arrival pathway or course, slow and fast airplanes are separated into 2 different altitudes. The slower airplanes fly the Fisk arrival 1,000 feet above the ground at an altitude of 1,800 feet and maintain about 90 knots. This line of airplanes is called the low track. Directly above the low track is the high track, just 500 feet above, for airplanes that require higher low-end flight speeds. The high track airplanes must maintain about 135 knots at 2,300 feet. They are flying 50% faster than the slower low track airplanes. Pilots follow the Fisk arrival path using these procedures, with no ATC help with separation from other airplanes until they arrive 5 nautical miles southwest of the airport at the Fisk Waypoint, named after the nearby road Fisk Avenue running west to east. There are occasions where no runways are available, and all the traffic lined up on the Fisk arrival must enter holding patterns around their adjacent lakes to their north until the airport opens again. ATC initiates any holding as required. At the Fisk Waypoint, the path to the Oshkosh Airport splits into 2 paths, one path going northeast to the north runway, and the second path eastbound to the south runways. On the ground below the airplanes, just north of the Fisk Waypoint, is the Fisk Approach Control Station, consisting of a small trailer with tables and chairs outside where a number of controllers visually observe the arriving airplanes and tell them which path and runway they must proceed to. Airplane runway assignments depend on the runways available, traffic congestion, and consideration for separation of the fast and slower traffic. Once passing Fisk, the high-track airplanes must descend to the low-track altitude of 1,800 feet. Complicating runway assignments as there must be enough space between fast and slow airplanes beyond Fisk going to the same runway, so the slower airplanes are not overtaken and have enough spacing at landing. Airplanes often arrive at the Fisk Waypoint in rapid sequence, even 2 at the same time between the low and high tracks. So the Fisk approach controllers must sometimes issue so many instructions in quick succession that the arrival procedures eliminate the normal pilot readback acknowledgement of instructions. Pilots are asked to visually acknowledge most instructions by rolling the airplane's attitude back and forth, known as wing rock, which controllers can see from their ground station. To rock one's wings flying into Oshkosh AirVenture is a kind of rite of passage in the world of aviation. On passing Fisk, pilots change to tower control frequencies for their assigned runway, receiving directions for their traffic spacing and runway landing, also only with wing rock acknowledgments. To accommodate high volumes of arriving traffic, multiple airplanes land on the same runway at the same time, but at different locations. These locations are marked by large colored circular or square dots, and pilots are told which dots or squares to land on. Ground taxiing. Once on the ground and off the runway, there's no radio communication with ground control because the frequency would be too congested. Instead, there's a vast network of surface traffic directors, called ground marshals, working under tower control that are spread across the airport. The ground marshals read the signs pilots display in the windshields indicating where they want to go, and the ground marshals point them in the right direction. Turbines and warbirds arrival. Another famous AirVenture arrival procedure is the turbines and warbirds arrival, usually just called the warbird arrival. As the name suggests, it is intended for faster airplanes with the low end of their flight envelope too fast for the Fisk arrival, such as is typical with turbine engine-powered airplanes and most military aircraft. The warbird arrival begins over the city of Fond du Lac, 12 nautical miles south of the Oshkosh Airport, just beyond the southern tip of Lake Winnebago. The path proceeds north along the western bank of Lake Winnebago to a small island called Warbird Island. The arrival's initial speeds are limited to less than 250 knots, and pilots need to stay above 3,300 feet to avoid the temporary Fond du Lac Airport Control Zone. On beginning the arrival, pilots announce on the Oshkosh South Tower frequency they are over Fond du Lac, their type aircraft, and colors. Once clear of the Fond du Lac Control Zone, the arrival altitude is 2,800 feet. Pilots are to enter holding in counterclockwise circular orbits around Warbird Island until they receive instructions for landing. On arriving at Warbird Island, pilots must announce their arrival on the tower frequency. Landing instructions are normally to one of the south runways, though the north runway is often assigned too. Overhead approaches, when approved, usually start at a 2-mile initial waypoint and an 1,800-foot altitude, and the brake turn will always be away from the airport. Ultralights and home-built rotorcraft. Ultralight and home-built rotorcraft base at the ultralight grass surface runway just west of runway 36 left. The ultralight arrival procedure follows Highway 26 northeast to the ultralight traffic pattern's southwest corner, located at the intersection of Interstate Highway 41, Highway 26, and 5th Avenue. Flying the arrival requires approval by EAA Ultralight Flight Line Operations. Arrivals are scheduled between noon and 2 p.m. daily. The ultralight traffic pattern makes an approximate square with a runway at the top right, northeast corner of the pattern. The direction of the traffic pattern, clockwise or counterclockwise, depends on the winds. The maximum ultralight aircraft altitude is 300 feet above the ground, an altitude of 1,100 feet for their arrivals, traffic pattern, flights, and departures. Arrivals and departures fly under the Fisk arrival traffic to the south runways. Seaplane Base. The Seaplane Base is 3.5 nautical miles south of the Oshkosh Airport in the lagoon along the shores of Lake Winnebago. Seaplanes flying in and out of the Seaplane Base fly at altitudes less than 1,350 feet. Takeoff and landing locations and directions depend on winds, wave action, and surface traffic. No takeoffs and landings are allowed in the lagoon, only on Lake Winnebago. Flights should avoid the Oshkosh Control Zone, except when on approach or departures east from the Seaplane Base over Lake Winnebago. Transient VFR helicopters. The AirVenture helipad and helicopter parking is located at the Pioneer Airport. Arrivals and departures must enter the Class D control zone from the west following Wacow Avenue, staying on the north side of the road, and fly at 1,300 feet altitude, 500 feet above the ground. Departures fly west along the south side of Wacow Avenue. They fly under airplanes flying the Fisk arrival to the north runway. IFR arrivals and departures. An IFR flight to and from Oshkosh AirVenture requires a reservation in the Special Traffic Management Program, STMP, with a specific time slot. Flights to Oshkosh AirVenture under IFR rules and Instrument Meteorological Conditions, IMC, will conclude with RNAV GPS approaches to runway 9 or 27. If weather conditions are sealing better than 4,500 feet AGL and greater than 5 miles, all IFR arrivals, except air carriers and turbojet aircraft, are strongly encouraged to cancel their IFR flight plan around 60 nautical miles from Oshkosh and fly the appropriate VFR arrival procedure for their type aircraft. VFR and IFR departures. After listening to ATIS, departures begin by taxiing and placing a sign showing VFR or IFR in one's windshields, so the ground marshals can direct each aircraft to the current active departure runway. At the departure location, ATC controllers will be right there alongside the departing aircraft, working from an open trailer, not in the control tower. These ATC trailers are called MOOCOWs, for Mobile Operations and Communication Workstations, a nod to Wisconsin's famous dairy industry. Departing airplanes have defined path options to follow depending on the runway and must stay at or below 500 feet above the ground, 1,300 feet altitude, until clear of the control zone. This is important because often they will be departing and flying just below arriving airplanes only 500 feet above them at 1,800 feet. Fond du Lac Airport. The Fond du Lac Airport, 12 nautical miles south of Oshkosh, is a good nearby fly-in option for attending the AirVenture Fly In Convention and an excellent alternate airport when Oshkosh flight operations unexpectedly become suspended, as they do on occasion. Scheduled ground transportation is available to and from the Oshkosh Airport. The select AirVenture ATC team also operates its temporary control tower during the convention. Appleton Airport. The Appleton Airport, 16 nautical miles north of Oshkosh, is another good nearby fly-in option for attending the AirVenture Fly In Convention, and an excellent alternate airport should Oshkosh flight operations become suspended. Appleton is a tower-controlled airport and there are several recommended VFR reporting points for inbound traffic. AirVenture ATC controllers. The AirVenture air traffic control team consists of 65 experienced controllers, specially selected from around the USA. They are easily recognized with their bright pink shirts worn during the convention. They conduct the various ATC functions in teams of 4 controllers. These controllers are organized into 16 teams of 4 members each, a team lead, a rookie, and 2 veterans called limited members. Each controller in the team collaborates closely to ensure safe and efficient aircraft operations. Typically, only one of the controllers communicates directly with the pilots and is called the communicator, while the other 3 provide critical support by spotting, monitoring aircraft positions, coordinating movements, managing sequencing, and passing their instructions to the communicator for transmission. This collaborative approach allows the team to handle the high volume of traffic. The teams rotate through the various ATC locations and functions, including the Oshkosh Control Tower, Fond du Lac Tower, the Fisk Approach Control Station, and MUCAL mobile departure platforms. This rotation ensures all controllers are familiar and skilled with each operational role. Pilots. We should not overlook the critical role the pilots themselves playing in conducting thousands of safe flights to and from the AirVenture Convention. The AirVenture procedures are unique and somewhat complex when all combined together. Each year, thousands of pilots study the latest procedures described in the 32-page FAA notice and safely fly their unique airplane in careful compliance with the system's procedures. It is not unusual for their airmanship skills to be challenged by the demanding environment and the ATC instructions they receive. That's a quick introduction to the amazing AirVenture air traffic control system. Okay, now let's count down 10 ways for ATC to make flying into AirVenture easier and safer. Let's start with the simplest and progress to the more complicated and likely more problematic proposals. Here's the first fast and easy one. Number 10. Arrival ATIS unavailable at distant Fisk starting points. Alright, I'm going to start my descent down to 2300.
Correctional, here. Dakota Mooney, going runway 27, mark tower 118.5, up to the show.
Alright, 6 miles from Endeavor, and see if we're getting the ATIS to Oshkosh. Nope.
Why wouldn't you be getting it? It says with...
Too far out.
It says no later than 60 miles from Osh.
Yeah, maybe we're higher.
Oh, so you tune it to it, but you may not receive it.
The distant Fisk arrival starting points are beyond reception range for the Oshkosh ATIS broadcast. Suggest adding remarks to the Oshkosh notice that ATIS may not be available at the distant Fisk arrival waypoints, and suggest pilots check ATIS or AWAS at nearby airports for altimeter settings. It is important pilots have accurate altimeter settings so the arrival track separation altitudes are sufficiently maintained. Monitor Fisk approach, which can be heard at distant waypoints to discern airport and arrival information from controller communications. It might be helpful for Fisk approach to periodically announce the current altimeter setting during periods where the most distant starting points are active. An AirVenture arrival ATIS SMS text line service during AirVenture could also fill the gap. Number 9. Clarify base turn limits for runways 18 left and right landing patterns. There's conflicting guidance to pilots in the Oshkosh 2024 notice on page 12 for runways 18 left and right approaches, where the text states pilots should start turning base no later than a beam the blue dot, and the drawing's label says be on base leg by the blue dot. The do not fly shaded areas show enough safe zone clearance from runways 9 and 27 to start one's turn to base no later than the blue dot, agreeing with the textual description. Pilot confusion on this point could result in some pilots turning too early for the landing targets they've been assigned to land on, and push them toward more risky, low-altitude, aggressive maneuvering. Number 8. Flight path from Fisk Waypoint to south runways must be south of Fisk Avenue. Suggest emphasis in the Oshkosh notice. The flight pathway from Fisk Waypoint to the south runways, 18 left and right, 36 left and right, must remain on the south side of Fisk Avenue to avoid the ultralights traffic pattern also bordering Fisk Avenue but on the north side. This is particularly important for airplanes landing on runway 36 left and 36 right, where most pilots will have already descended to within about 200 feet of the altitude of the ultralights, flying the ultralight traffic pattern very close to the Fisk arrivals. Number 7. Add Fisk arrival, follow railroad tracks waypoint. The controllers at Fisk need pilots to accurately fly over the railroad tracks leading to the Fisk waypoint, so their visual identification from the ground is more effective.
Oshkosh AirVenture 2024, we're joining up at Green Lake. Right over the railroad tracks, no over-unders, no side-by-sides, half mile in trail. We need people at 90 knots, 1,800 feet, 130 knots, 2,300 feet. It's very important between Ripon to Fisk that everybody over the top of those railroad tracks in a single file line. It's incredibly important for us to be able to pick you out. If you're not within about a half a mile of Fisk, we're definitely probably not talking to you to give you a runway assignment. So if you hear a like-type aircraft get a runway assignment and you're far away, it's definitely not going to be used. So just keep trucking this way and we will give people their choice of runway if possible. If not, there's a runway balance.
It can be difficult for some pilots to accurately follow the railroad tracks as required because when directly over a railroad line, the view ahead is obstructed by the airplane's nose, and pilots can only see railroad tracks in front of them far beyond their current position.
Kind of hard to make out their train from the railroad tracks here, but I got them.
If you're inbound inside of Ripon but prior to Fisk, are there any flights of 2 or more out there?
12 o'clock, low, less than 1 mile.
Also, there are portions of the railroad track between Ripon and Fisk waypoints surrounded by many trees that make it difficult to identify the railroad tracks, and it tricks some pilots into following the nearby highway. This is especially true as one nears the Fisk waypoint and probably contributes to some pilots incorrectly following the very visible Highway 44 that diverges from the railroad tracks before Fisk. Many aircraft are now equipped with GPS navigation systems that can easily supplement a pilot's visual navigation over the tracks of the Fisk arrival course. Pilots do have the option to manually create their own waypoint as well, but it would be easier if all used the exact same one. Please consider creating a new official VFR waypoint to help pilots follow the railroad tracks line change, the bend, from Ripon to Fisk with information from their navigation system. The suggested location for the new waypoint is somewhere near where the railroad tracks change course, 2.1 miles before Pickett City. For waypoint name options, perhaps VPFRT. For VFR waypoint, follow railroad tracks. On a related note, the notice's schematic drawings of the maps from Ripon to Fisk inaccurately depict the pathway of the railroad tracks, which can be confusing to some pilots who study them closely. It doesn't accurately depict the bend or the turn between Ripon and Fisk. An alternative option to improve pilots' visual tracking of the railroad tracks is specifying pilots fly a quarter-mile offset to the right so the tracks more immediately below the airplane can be seen and more accurately followed. Number 6. Fisk arrival, high track, low track merge. At the Fisk waypoint, the high track airplanes at 2,300 feet and 135 knots must begin descending to the same altitude as the low track airplanes at 1,800 feet and 90 knots, and possibly find themselves trying to follow much slower airplanes to the runway. The airplanes in the high track are there because their low-end flight envelope margins require the higher speeds. Depending on the airplane, the pilots may have some margin for speed reduction, but not likely all the way to 90 knots. So at this high track, low track merger, post the Fisk waypoint, there's a high probability of high track airplanes overtaking the slower low track airplanes and having to break out of the approach if there's not enough space between them. I have personally heard Fisk controllers turning a high track airplane behind a low track airplane and telling them to, quote, slow down. May I suggest such requests be phrased something like, slower traffic ahead, reduce speed if able. If unable to stay behind the slower traffic, execute a breakout maneuver to the south for south runways or west for north runways. Normally, Fisk controllers avoid these challenges by segregating the fast and slower traffic between different runways, the north and south runways. Sometimes only one runway is available, though, and controllers must direct all arrivals to the same runway. If a fast, high-track airplane must follow a slow, low-track airplane to a runway, the slow-track airplane must be at least 2.4 miles ahead when the fast airplane crosses Fisk for arrivals on runways 9 and 36. For runway 27, it's at least 3 miles. For landings on runways 18 right and left, the slow airplane must be at least 3.4 nautical miles ahead for the fast airplane to not overtake it before it lands. If the Fisk arrival is very busy, with low-track airplanes spaced out at half or 1 mile separation intervals, it will be very difficult to get fast, high-track airplanes integrated with the low-track. The Fisk arrival procedural rules require an airplane overtaking the airplane in front of them to exit, break out of the procedure, and return to the currently active Fisk arrival transition starting point to re-enter the line. It would be helpful for pilots if Fisk Approach Control's procedural logic rules for assigning runways to airplanes arriving at the Fisk waypoint were published in the AirVenture Oshkosh notice. This will assist pilots of faster airplanes in better understanding the challenges they may face after crossing the Fisk waypoint as they integrate with the slower traffic and help them anticipate when an abort, breakout, from the Fisk procedures may be needed. The Fisk arrival fast and slow airplane integration problem can be easier if an option for a longer offset approach path is provided for the high-track aircraft to help them stay behind the slower airplanes. For example, offset west of the railroad tracks when headed to the north runway, or farther south of Fisk Avenue when headed to the south runways. An option that keeps high-track airplanes at 1,500 feet AGL or 2,300 feet MSL all the way to their traffic pattern descent is problematic because closely spaced high-track and low-track airplanes, separated mainly by altitude, will not likely be able to see each other. This option may also create problems for pilots not accustomed to flying 1,500 feet AGL traffic patterns. On preparing to fly the Fisk arrival, 30 minutes before starting the procedure, I looked at the Fisk traffic on FlightAware and saw 2 airplanes fly directly across the Fisk arrival pathway at the Fisk waypoint and very close to the Fisk arrival altitudes. Here are screenshots captured of what I saw. One was a P-51 Mustang at 2,500 feet altitude, and the second a Piper Arrow at 2,200 feet. This seemed dangerous and apparently commonplace, assuming my brief look at the Fisk arrival traffic was representative. The Fisk waypoint is just outside of the Oshkosh control zone to the southwest, and low altitude traffic, often departures from runway 27, seem to routinely cross directly over. Even if crossing aircraft are providing 500 feet of altitude margin above the high track line of airplanes, they will still be setting off the traffic surveillance alarms of airplanes on the Fisk arrival, arriving at the Fisk waypoint, creating unnecessary distractions at a critical time for everyone. This occurred on our Fisk arrival that went awry. So to help eliminate transient aircraft flying through the long line of aircraft flying the Fisk arrival procedures, I suggest implementing a TFR for the Fisk arrival airspace. A formal TFR should create more awareness among pilots, especially for the many whose avionics systems depict TFRs on their map displays. The Fisk arrival TFR would be for the duration of the EAA convention during the daily periods of Oshkosh arrivals and departures. Approved entry to the TFR airspace would only be for aircraft flying Fisk VFR arrival procedures. The Fisk arrival TFR is suggested to encompass at least the area between Fisk and Ripon waypoints, but perhaps it should include the pathway to Green Lake waypoint as well. The TFR altitude would be the surface to 2,500 feet AGL, 3,300 feet MSL, the same ceiling as the Oshkosh control zone. Beyond Fisk, the pathways are inside the Oshkosh control zone. The TFR's lateral airspace limits are suggested to be at least 1.5 nautical miles on each side of the Fisk arrival pathway. Number 4. Warbird arrival eligibility criteria. The turbine in Warbird's arrival is officially eligible only to aircraft with turbine power plants and those designed for fast military missions, so-called Warbirds. The key feature of the Warbird arrival's design, though, is that it supports higher aircraft approach speeds. Today there are high-performance experimental single-piston engine airplanes with terminal approach speeds similar to twin-engine business jets. And there are turbine aircraft with low gross weights and large wings that fly the landing pattern at speeds typical of a single-engine piston airplane. So since some of today's high-performance experimental piston single-engine airplanes have terminal area flight speed requirements like business jets, approach speeds as criteria for the Warbird arrival have more generic applicability than an airplane's power plant or airplanes designed for military application. The EAA appears to recognize these considerations since the EAA has approved of the faster approach speed Lancer models to use the Warbird arrival. There are a number of other airplane models that should qualify as well. This improvement suggestion is to establish more relevant criteria for aircraft eligible to use the higher flight speed turbine and Warbird arrival procedures. Number 3. Pilot aborts, breakouts of the arrivals. For the Fisk arrival before passing the Fisk waypoint, the Oshkosh notice provides clear criteria for when pilots should abort or exit the procedure and re-enter at the current starting transition point. Once pilots pass the Fisk waypoint, it is not so clear. Beyond Fisk, the airplanes are in the Oshkosh control zone and soon after receiving ATC guidance from the tower's controllers. With a high volume of traffic, these controllers are mostly focused on the airplanes within 2 miles of a runway, needing final sequencing and runway assignments. It would be helpful for pilots to more clearly understand all their ATC-endorsed options for situations where a pilot concludes it is best to abort their arrival procedures at any time in the arrival process. This would help pilots better prepare for their approach, especially in an emergency situation where it's not time to make a request to ATC for safe abort instructions. Suggest adding a section to the AirVenture Oshkosh notice showing example best abort breakout maneuvers or off-ramps from the various AirVenture arrival procedures at each phase in their approach and landing process. The instructions would emphasize the importance of coordinating the exit or abort from the procedure with the tower where time permits, or, if an emergency, is soon thereafter. Before our first Fisk arrival, I thought about this subject carefully and found knowing what my breakout options were helped lower the tension level involved in flying the unique procedures for the first time. In determining what I thought would be best in the various situations, I tried not to only see a pilot's viewpoint, but also an ATC controller's viewpoint as best I could. I found this very valuable and is why I am suggesting adding a section to the AirVenture Oshkosh notice to make it as accurate as possible and help get all pilots thinking more comprehensively about it before flying the arrival. The first fundamental rule would be, if the urgency of the situation permits, to advise tower ATC of one's location and the need to break out and then follow their instructions. If there is no time to request instructions or permission, the basic breakout procedures would be, before entering a runway's traffic pattern, to break out in a direction away from the airport and other traffic and climb to 3,500 feet MSL above the Oshkosh control zone ceiling of 3,300 feet. If in the pattern, stay in and follow to above the runway, fly to 500 feet AGL, that's 1,300 feet altitude, and the flight path established for departures for that runway. Number 2. Traffic pattern downwind offset distances and controller instructions to pilots. The Oshkosh Notice's drawings show landing traffic patterns for runway 27, runways 18 right and 18 left that have downwind leg offset distances too small for most fast-flying aircraft. Also, some AirVenture controllers routinely instruct pilots flying the approach to runway 27 from Fisk to stay inside of the gravel pit. This is too small a downwind offset distance for the faster airplanes. Some pilots will interpret the Oshkosh Notice's pattern drawings and controller instructions strictly and put themselves in landing pattern turns that make it more probable that they will overshoot the runway's final approach course, or more likely, be motivated to fly aggressive high bank turns, significantly reducing their wing stall margins and increasing stall risk on their downwind turn to final. Here's some physics data to put numbers to this subject. This chart shows the turn arc diameter of airplanes in a continuous 30-degree bank for various speeds on the downwind turn to final, all at a density altitude of 3,000 feet, equivalent to a hot Oshkosh summer day at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The turn arc diameter is equivalent to the traffic pattern downwind to runway offset distance, or just, let's call it downwind offset distance. A 30-degree bank angle is chosen because it is a good operational limit and reference for a low-altitude landing pattern downwind turn to final approach, effective without being too aggressive. My turn arc diameter plot assumes holding a 30-degree bank throughout the downwind turn to final and traces more of a racetrack landing pattern, typical for high-speed aircraft, compared to the squared-off, rectangular traffic patterns often depicted and flown, which are more representative of slower light aircraft landing patterns. AirVenture controllers generally want to see all pilots flying continuous turns from downwind to final, regardless of their pattern speeds. Suggest adding remarks to the notice that at Oshkosh AirVenture, the controllers typically expect even the slower airplanes to fly close-in racetrack turns to final, not squared-off patterns. The physics shows for faster aircraft, such as some twin-engine and high-performance experimental single-engine airplanes, with speeds on base closer to 110 knots, a no-wind downwind offset distance of over 4,000 feet is required. For 120 knots, it's closer to 5,000 feet. The AirVenture Oshkosh 2024 Notices schematic drawings on page 11 show a downwind offset distance for runway 27 well south of the gravel pit. This downwind offset distance is measured at 2,200 feet from the runway and is a comfortable distance for airplanes flying downwind turns to final at or below 80 knots indicated, no wind conditions, and is good for most certified or slower light aircraft. A 15-knot crosswind blowing toward the runway would require about a 600-foot increase in downwind offset distance for the same speed and bank angle on the turn to final. To fly this, notice depicted 2,200-foot downwind offset distance, an airplane flying 110 to 120 knots on the downwind turn to final would have to fly a very aggressive, risky continuous bank angle of about 50 degrees. The Oshkosh Notice schematic drawings show a downwind offset distance for runway 18 right along the main north-south road, Highway I-41 Alt. This downwind offset distance is 3,600 feet from runway 18 right and is within the described landing pattern turn criteria for airplanes flying base turns at or below 105 knots indicated in no wind conditions, good for a wider range of airplanes. A 15-knot crosswind blowing from the east toward the runway would require an 800-foot increase in the downwind offset distance for the same speed and 30-degree bank angle turn to final. The AirVenture temporary runway 18 left, using what is normally taxiway alpha, is 500 feet farther east than runway 18 right, and its available turn arc diameter of 3,100 feet can be flown with a downwind turn to final, maximum average speed of about 95 knots indicated. Pilots with airplanes that must fly higher speeds on their downwind turns to final should know they'll need a larger downwind offset distance than depicted in the Oshkosh Notice. Controllers should be very cautious about setting aggressive pattern constraints on pilots of high-performance airplanes, especially downwind offset distances. Most pilots will naturally set a good downwind offset distance for the airplane they are flying, the current winds, and the density altitude effect on their speeds. If tower controllers are going to set limits on airplane downwind offset distances, suggest they thoroughly familiarize themselves with airplane models that look like typical certified single-engine light aircraft, but which have to fly faster speeds than the landing pattern. Most are experimental aircraft, and AirVenture is, after all, the home of experimental aircraft. Some examples include the Lancer Legacy, Lancer 4 and 4P, Quest AirVenture, Swear Engine SX300, and Thunder Mustang. Pilots receiving traffic pattern landing instructions from controllers that would push their airplane too close to the edge of its flight envelope should be prepared to report on the radio something like "Enable flight envelope limits," and propose a workable alternative. How about north edge of the gravel pit for the downwind leg? As an example. Suggest remarks be added to the Oshkosh notice acknowledging, although the FISC arrival procedures require airplanes to directly follow the airplane in line and in front of them, once they pass the FISC waypoint and approach their runway's landing pattern, the size of their pattern, especially the downwind offset distance to be flown, depends on their airplane's landing pattern speeds and associated turning circle diameter distances. And that pilots flying faster airplanes are not expected to directly follow slower airplanes flying smaller patterns appropriate for their airplane, and vice versa. Suggest adding illustrations to the Oshkosh notice showing approximate landing pattern downwind leg locations for Oshkosh runways 27 and 18 for both slower light airplanes and higher speed airplanes to assist both pilots and controllers in approach and landing planning for their particular airplane speed class. Number 1. Aircraft identification and communications. Now for the number 1 and last suggestion for making flying into AirVenture easier and safer for pilots and controllers. This final suggestion is based on study of a near mid-air collision incident we had flying the FISC arrival. Fortunately, the incident was captured by our onboard cameras, so everyone can join us in the cockpit and experience what went right and wrong along with us. Each viewer can form their own conclusions about why things went awry and how best to adjust the system so there are fewer close calls like this one in the future. So let's begin by watching our STARHAWK FISC arrival where things went astray as we experienced it from the cockpit, and then we'll run through it again with additional forensic data and insights included. I may sometimes refer to Allison and me as the STARHAWK flight crew. Note at the time of this flight, I was a rookie FISC arrival flyer and Allison had not thoroughly studied the notice. Let's pick up the FISC arrival as we approach the Ripon waypoint, just 4 minutes from the FISC waypoint.
General aircraft inbound for Oshkosh. Oshkosh is arriving runway 3627. Be familiar with these procedures in your NOTAMs. Green light transition is in effect.
They're about a quarter mile away from 400 feet below, if you can see it.
You have a good eyeballs on the railroad tracks?
No, I have not found that. Oh, well, yeah, I think so. I think they're kind of going.
I think they're more on my side.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. I think they're kind of going like that.
Somebody way down there.
Good morning and welcome to Oshkosh.
A mile from Ripon.
But are you going the right direction?
Okay. Autopilot on. I'm going to fly over those railroad tracks.
Digital aircraft, we're arriving runways 36 and 27, pages 13 and 11.
Railroad tracks.
Yeah, I think so.
Please become familiar with these procedures in the notice. Green light transition is in effect.
Look at that very white road down there and make sure that doesn't have railroad tracks down there.
At minimum of 1/2 mile intrail space.
No, that's a road and that has cars on it. This is railroad tracks.
Yeah. In order to maintain that spacing, it is not going to work. Break it off. Return to green light. We'll get everybody in before the air show if you're out there right now. So you can break it off and then we can get back in line. We'll call you out by type and color or any other distinguishing features in the immediate vicinity of Fisk. 1,890 knots, or if you have the airspeed indicator that says miles per hour, that's 104 miles per hour. 90 knots, 104 miles per hour at 1,800 feet. If you're in the high track, 2,300 and 135 knots. And we see a Congo line coming up inside a rip in there. We'll pick you out as you get closer. There's a bend in the tracks, so make sure you follow the railroad tracks. I follow railroads. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
I follow railroads. There's a bend in the tracks.
Yeah, see, we're coming up on the bend here.
A little bit to the left. It's about 4 miles outside.
You're creeping down.
12 ticket. There's a grain elevator there. That is not Fisk. I repeat, that is not Fisk. Some guys turn early. Don't turn there. Come up towards Fisk. If you're DME, we know you have the waypoint in there. We love the GPS, but don't fly the magenta line. Just use it for the DME as you're coming up the railroad tracks. If it's 1.0 or greater, we are not talking to you yet. If it's less than a mile, 1.0, 1.0, we're talking to you then. That'll be with you. And we'll pick you out by type and color. And we'll see a couple coming up. We'll pick you up as you come up the tracks.
Put the nose down there to see the tracks.
Formation flights inbound.
Okay.
A little high here.
Yep.
Traffic, 5 o'clock, low, 0 miles. Traffic, 5 o'clock, low.
Just so they're 5 miles out.
Oh, you got slow on speed.
Yeah.
At altitude.
Cherokee has high pass mile southwest of Fisk, Rocky Wings.
Seems like you're where the tracks.
Mile southwest of Fisk, the one
Am I on the tracks?
over Fisk.
I don't know.
Over Fisk, Rocky Wings for me.
Seems like you are.
All right, we're 4 miles out from Fisk.
Okay, it might be a commander or something. I need a wing rock, just a wing rock directly over Fisk. Please rock your wings for me so we can talk to you and give you your runway, please. Blue nose airplane, rock your wings for me.
Creeping up.
There we go. Please don't be picky. I'm not perfect.
Is that you?
I think I'm too far away from it.
That's runway 27, follow railroad tracks, maintain 1,000.
Yeah, they said if you're a mile or more out, they're not talking to you. But good practice.
8.5.
Oh, what's that for us? I think we're too far out for
I
that.
think we're too far out. If you said it was 4 miles to Fisk, then we're too far out. So you're good on your speed,
Yeah,
you're good on
2
your
miles to
altitude. You seem to be following the railroad tracks. Now, are you coming up on the bend? This guy's only 200.
Bonanza, half mile southwest of Fisk with the gear up. Rock your wings for me.
Got a guy going that way.
Fisk, rock your wings for me. Low wing over Fisk, rock your wings for me.
How does he consider us? Maybe at 114?
I don't
Low
know.
wing, gear up directly over Fisk. Maybe a V-tail Bonanza or T-tail. Turn right. T-tail, turn right. T-tail, turn right. Just go ahead and turn right for me.
1 mile.
Your altitude.
I don't think he's talking about us.
Nope. Test 1, 2. Anybody inbound for Fisk? Quick radio check.
Yep, gotcha. Yeah, 1 Tango Foxtrot, loud, clear.
Or something directly over Fisk. Okay, the high wing that's going, the one that's over Fisk going fast, go fast, the railroad tracks. The one that's just past Fisk with the details to make a right turn, 130, there you go, right turn. I'm going to keep saying right turn until you turn right. I need you to turn right.
I don't think he's talking to you.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, if you're not listening to me, just, tower 18.5.
You're slow on your speed. You're not doing 135 how you're supposed to be.
No, slow down. Yeah, I think he said the fast one go down the tracks.
Fisk going up the railroad tracks, tower is 18.5.
Okay.
The next one, that's about 3/4, it's a RV12.
I need to go down to 18. I think he's calling somebody else to split out.
Why are you going? There's a person down below you.
Oh, we got to watch out for that then.
Yeah. Why are you going down to 18?
Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, we're going to have to split off.
Okay.
Yeah. Says 1 Tango Foxtrot inbound to the north runway. We've got traffic right by us. So we're going to split off to the north and re-enter.
Okay, yeah, you said you're going to turn off to the left and go back and start over?
Yeah, that's firm. Yeah, we had traffic right down at 18 where we need to be.
Sirius inside the ground, fifth, start your descent. Base of beam the numbers, 1 continuous turn to final, aim at the orange dot, green dot, you're clear to land. Right, heading 090, join the east-west road, and monitor tower now 126.6. Welcome to the show. Twin up high with the wigwags. Rock your wings for me. Good. 321 Tango Foxtrot, Fisk, are you up?
Yeah, 1 Tango Foxtrot, still on.
Okay, thanks for breaking yourself out. You can rejoin at Ripon is what the supervisor says. Thanks for following the NOTAM, and then you can rejoin at Ripon. You can follow the railroad tracks.
Roger that, 1 Tango Foxtrot, rejoin at Ripon, follow the tracks.
Okay, runways 36 and 27, pages 11 and 13 of the NOTAM is what we're using today. Start at the Green Lake transition, except for 1 Tango Foxtrot, we're going to let you go.
Roger that.
Okay, the Lancer, we do appreciate that. Yeah, you can just go south down to Rush Lake and then rejoin over Ripon for us for 1 Tango Foxtrot.
Roger that, 1 Tango Foxtrot, south down Rush Lake, and we'll rejoin at Ripon.
Thank you very much. That was a smart move, sir.
Roger that, yeah, I don't think that guy realized you were the one, you were calling him to go south.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, one could say that the Fisk arrival procedures worked as intended, and the traffic conflict was resolved by one of the airplanes recognizing the problem and breaking out of the arrival. The STARHAWK flight crew, though, never had visual contact with the lower altitude conflicting traffic, and if it had not been for STARHAWK's onboard air traffic surveillance systems, this situation had an uncomfortable high probability of resulting in a fatal mid-air collision. People in airplanes without traffic surveillance capabilities in this situation may have had a tragic outcome. The other airplane, arriving at the Fisk waypoint just before STARHAWK, did not recognize the control team's instructions for them. It was also confusing for me because the controller's descriptions of the errant subject airplane also accurately described the STARHAWK Lancer legacy. I had correctly concluded the Fisk control team's communicator's transmission, the one that's over fast, go fast over the railroad tracks, was meant for STARHAWK and the high track, but I still had a degree of uncertainty. Did the errant airplane's pilot also think the instructions were for them? If we can identify the root causes of these problems, it may be clear how AirVenture ATC procedures can be adjusted for better results in the future. Let's look at the arrival again, this time with more information to help get to the root causes. I'll pause briefly at 3 key points in the flight with comments.
General aircraft inbound for Oshkosh. Oshkosh is arriving runway 3627. Be familiar with these procedures in your NOTAMs. Green Lake transition is in effect.
They're about a quarter mile away from 400 feet below, if you can see it.
You have a good eyeballs on the railroad tracks?
No, I have not found that. Oh, well, yeah, I think so. I think they're kind of going.
I think they're more on my side.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. I think they're kind of going like that.
Somebody way down there.
Good morning and welcome to Oshkosh.
A mile from Ripon.
But are you going the right direction?
Okay. Autopilot on.
Green Lake
I'm going to fly over those railroad tracks.
Digital aircraft, we're arriving runways 36 and 27, pages 13 and 11.
Railroad tracks.
Yeah, I think so.
Please become familiar with these procedures in the notice. Green Lake transition is in effect.
Look at that very white road down there, and make sure that doesn't have railroad tracks down there.
At minimum of 1/2 mile intrail space.
No, that's a road that has cars on it. This is railroad tracks.
Yeah.
In order to maintain that spacing, it is not going to work. Break it off. Return to Green Lake. We'll get everybody in before the air show if you're out there right now. So you can break it off and then we can get back in line. We'll call you out by type and color or any other distinguishing features in the immediate vicinity of Fisk. 1,890 knots, or if you have the airspeed indicator that says miles per hour, that's 104 miles per hour. 90 knots, 104 miles per hour at 1,800 feet. If you're in the high track, 2,300 and 135 knots.
It can be seen that the arrival is not too busy, and we have several airplanes inside of the Ripon waypoint, inbound for the Fisk waypoint. The STARHAWK Lancer Legacy is flying the high track and a Rockwell Commander 112 is in the low track a few miles ahead. The Cirrus SR-22 is ahead of the Commander airplane and in the high track. These are the principal airplanes of focus for the incident. There are several other airplanes in the low track inside of Ripon as well. The configuration types of these focus airplanes are similar: low wing, high performance, single engine propeller airplanes. Each of these airplanes have a blue accent color. STARHAWK's blue nose, the Commander's lower fuselage is blue, and the Cirrus's entire fuselage is blue. The STARHAWK and the Commander both have retractable landing gear. The FISC approach control team and their communicator are excellent. When they're not busy with arrivals, they're reminding everyone on frequency of key points of the procedures and how things work. The control team's communicator sets a friendly, professional tone that I expect everyone appreciates. STARHAWK is about 8 nautical miles from FISC. Let's rejoin the flight as we approach the bend in the railroad tracks.
And we see a Congo line coming up inside of Ripon there. We'll pick you out as you get closer. There's a bend in the tracks, so make sure you follow the railroad tracks. I follow railroads. That's what we're doing today.
Yep.
I follow railroads. There's a bend in the tracks.
Yeah, see, we're coming up on the bend here.
A little bit to the left. It's about 4 miles outside.
You're creeping down.
12 tickets. There's a grain elevator there. That is not FISC. I repeat, that is not FISC. Some guys turn early. Don't turn there. Come up towards FISC. If you're DME, we know you have the waypoint in there. We love the GPS, but don't fly the magenta line. Just use it for the DME as you're coming up the railroad tracks. If it's 1.0 or greater, we are not talking to you yet. If it's less than a mile, 1.0, 1.0, we're talking to you then. That'll be with you. And we'll pick you out by type and color. And we'll see a couple coming up. We'll pick you up as you come up the tracks.
Put the nose down there to see the tracks.
Formation flights inbound.
Okay.
A little high here.
Yep.
Traffic, 5 o'clock, low, 0 miles. Traffic, 5 o'clock, low.
Just so they're 5 miles out.
Oh, you got slow on speed?
Yeah.
At altitude.
Cherokee has high pass mile southwest of FISC, rocking wings.
Seems like you're where the tracks.
Mile southwest of FISC, the one
Am I on the tracks?
over FISC.
I don't know.
Directly over FISC, rocking wings for me.
Seems like you are.
All right, we're 4 miles out from FISC.
Okay, it might be a Commander or something. I need a wing rock, just a wing rock directly over FISC. Please rock your wings for me so we can talk to you and give you your runway, please. Blue nose airplane, rock your wings for me.
Creeping up.
There we go. Please don't be picky. I'm not perfect.
Is that you?
I think I'm too far away from it.
That's runway 27, follow railroad tracks, maintain 1,000.
Yeah, they said if you're a mile or more out, they're not talking to you. But good practice.
8.5.
Oh, what's that for us? I think we're too far out for that.
I think we're too far out. If you said it was 4 miles to FISC, then we're too far out.
The control team described the Cirrus at the FISC waypoint as the Cherokee half-mile southwest of FISC. Said, could be a Commander or something, but there was no acknowledgement by the pilot. Calls continued for the airplane directly over FISC, but it was not until it was described as having a blue nose that the Cirrus pilot acknowledges with a wing rock. The controller wisely reminds everyone listening to not be too picky in how accurately their airplane is described. The controllers routinely remind everyone on frequency that if you're within a mile of the FISC waypoint, they're probably talking to you. By the way, airplanes on the arrival are a mile from the FISC waypoint just after Highway 44 splits off from the railroad tracks. Of course, when one is over that point, they cannot see directly below the airplane. Using nav system-based distances to FISC waypoint is best, but definitely, if you can see the highway split off out in front of your airplane, you're not within a mile of FISC. When a high-track and low-track airplane show up at FISC about the same time, one definitely needs other descriptive details to know they're being addressed. If one's airplane has ADS-B traffic surveillance data on board, one may usually know ahead of time when this is going to happen. But since not every airplane has ADS-B capability, One cannot be sure another airplane will not show up at Fisk the same time as them just because they don't see the airplane on their traffic display. The commander airplane was about 2.5 nautical miles from Fisk when the controller team was talking to the Cirrus airplane over Fisk. It is possible the commander pilot thinks the Fisk control team was talking to him since he was flying a commander and has a blue nose, and may believe he was just told to continue to follow the railroad tracks all the way to the north runway. I wouldn't be surprised if he was rocking his wings at the same time as the Cirrus pilot, especially because since I thought it very unlikely any other airplane ahead also had a blue nose, as STARHAWK does, and Fisk approach was not getting an acknowledgement, I also rocked STARHAWK just in case they were actually talking to us. Since we were 4 miles from Fisk at this point, it should not have responded. Let's rejoin the flight as we approach the Fisk waypoint 2.5 nautical miles out.
So you're good on your speed, you're good on your altitude. You seem to be following the railroad tracks. Now are you coming up on the bend? This guy's only 200.
Bonanza, half mile southwest of Fisk with the gear up. Rock your wings for me.
Got a guy going that way.
Fisk, rock your wings for me. Low wing over. Fisk, rock your wings for me.
How does he consider us? Maybe at 114?
I don't know.
Wing, gear up directly over Fisk. Maybe a V-tail Bonanza or a T-tail. Turn right. T-tail, turn right. T-tail, turn right. Just go ahead and turn right for me.
1 mile.
Your altitude.
I don't think he's talking about us.
Nope. Test 1, 2. Anybody inbound for Fisk? Quick radio check.
Yep, gotcha. Yeah, 1 Tango Foxtrot, loud, clear.
Or something directly over Fisk. Okay, the high wing that's going, the one that's over Fisk going fast, go fast, go fast, the railroad tracks. The one that's just past Fisk with the details to make a right turn, 130, 130, there you go, right turn, right turn, right turn, right turn, right turn. I'm going to keep saying right turn until you turn right. I need you to turn right.
I don't think he's talking to you.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, if you're not listening to me, just, you know, tower 18.5.
You're slow on your speed. You're not doing 135 are you supposed to be?
Yeah, slow down. Yeah, I think he said the fast one go down the tracks.
Fisk going up the railroad track, tower is 18.5.
Okay.
Before the Fisk waypoint, the commander airplane leaves the railroad tracks and starts following Highway 44, diverging to the east. It is difficult to see the railroad tracks, especially once Highway 44 merges alongside the railroad tracks about 4 nautical miles from Fisk. All one sees from these altitudes are trees alongside them. So when Highway 44 separates from the tracks about 1.25 nautical miles from Fisk, it is easy to be fooled. As STARHAWK approaches Fisk, there's also transient traffic coming from the north headed directly for Fisk and just 200 feet higher, setting off traffic alerts and requiring some pilot attention and distraction from the critical ATC procedures underway. I expect it's a distraction for the Fisk approach controllers as well. This aircraft is a Bonanza airplane that just departed from runway 27. This is a good example of why a TFR, at least for the final Ripon to Fisk leg of the arrival, seems necessary. The notice already urges pilots to not fly near the Fisk arrival airspace, though it is not being respected by every flyer.
I don't think he's talking about us.
The commander airplane in the low track ahead, setting off traffic alerts as expected, and the traffic display shows his flight deviation to the east as he follows Highway 44. Allison sees an airplane to her right, which is the commander, but the airplane was not visible from my seat. The commander was 1.2 nautical miles southwest of Fisk when the controller team began trying to confirm contact and provide directions. The controller described them as being a half mile southwest of Fisk with the gear up. At this time, the STARHAWK was 2 nautical miles from Fisk. There were calls to the airplane described as directly over Fisk, intended for the commander, but it was just inside of a mile from the Fisk waypoint. The controller's visual estimation of the commander's position relative to Fisk was possibly corrupted with the commander following Highway 44 farther south of the expected flight path over the railroad tracks. Fisk approach made multiple calls to the commander pilot without any responses. It was confusing to me as Fisk controllers were describing a low-wing airplane with landing gear retracted, same as STARHAWK. STARHAWK was still 1.4 nautical miles from the Fisk waypoint. Even when the commander airplane flew directly south of Fisk, but over the highway, controller team, with considerable effort and attempts, was unable to get the pilot to recognize we were trying to communicate with them. The control team's communicator conducted a radio check, and another pilot and I acknowledged. STARHAWK was a quarter-mile southwest of Fisk when the radio check was finished.
Maybe at 1.4.
I don't know.
Luckily, since we were now directly over Fisk, I correctly concluded ATC's instructions for the one that's over Fisk going fast, go fast over the railroad tracks, was for STARHAWK in the high fast track, and turned slightly right to continue following the railroad tracks to the northeast and runway 27.
Yeah, 1 Tango Foxtrot, miles clear.
Fisk approach again calls for the one that's just past Fisk to turn right repeatedly. Once the airplane did not change course, the controller, seeing the commander was not turning but still headed northeast, provided the tower frequency change to the north runway. Let's rejoin the flight just after STARHAWK passes Fisk after turning to continue following the railroad tracks to runway 27.
The next one, that's about 3/4, it's a RV12.
I need to go down to 18. I think he's calling somebody else to split out.
Why are you going? Yeah, there's a person down below you.
Oh, we got to watch out for that then.
Yeah. Why are you going down to 18?
Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, we're going to have to split off.
Okay.
Yeah. Says 1 Tango Foxtrot inbound to the north runway. We've got traffic right by us, so we're going to split off to the north and get re-enter.
Okay, yeah, you said you're going to turn off to the left and go back and start over?
Yeah, that's affirmed. Yeah, we had traffic right down at 18 where we need to be.
Sirius inside the ground pit, start your descent. Base of beam the numbers, 1 continuous turn to final, aim at the orange dot, green dot, you're clear to land. Right, heading 090, join the east-west road, and monitor tower now 126.6. Welcome to the show, twin up high with the wigwags. Rock your wings for me. Good.
After crossing Fisk, I was focused on the course change, required descent, speed reduction to get closer to the low track speed, and the tower frequency change. I did not immediately recognize the hazardous situation developing. My last check of the traffic surveillance was on traffic diverging off our right and someone crossing over the Fisk waypoint from north to south, an unfortunate distraction. They'd been 200 feet from our altitude, but climbing, when first showing up on the traffic display, just as the chaos was occurring on the Fisk approach frequency. After crossing Fisk and turning to stay over the railroad tracks, I heard the controller's resignation that the airplane he was trying to direct to the south runways was not responding. I had not yet put together that this nearby airplane was likely headed to the north runway along with us. My situational awareness was incomplete at a critical moment. I'd initiated the required descent from 2,300 feet to the low track altitude of 1,800 feet. When Allison, seeing our onboard traffic surveillance display, said, "Why are you going to there's a person down below you." I immediately stopped the descent, adding engine power, while I studied the traffic display and determining a breakout of the procedure was the best option. If Allie hadn't been focused on the traffic, how long would it have been before I'd recognized the very dangerous situation underway? I began executing a breakout abort from the procedure, turning to the west, climbing, and announced the breakout over the north tower frequency. The breakout maneuver placed us on the runway 27 straight out departure course, but above the runway departure's altitude of 1,300 feet. We never had visual contact with the commander airplane. The onboard surveillance data showed the commander airplane passed within 1,000 feet horizontally and 200 feet vertically before the STARHAWK collision avoidance breakout maneuver began. STARHAWK's onboard flight tracking avionics, both ADS-B data link and active tracking from its Garmin GTS 800 that sees aircraft with transponders, was key to avoiding a collision with the commander airplane.
Is it this one?
The commander pilot later confirmed he had ADS-B data out, so STARHAWK's active tracking capability was not critical in this incident. After returning home to Colorado, I contacted the commander pilot to discuss the Fisk incident. His name is Raphael, and he lives in the New York area. Raphael was convinced the Fisk approach controllers were not asking him to turn right, eastbound, to the south runways. He reported he had flown to Oshkosh AirVenture in previous years, so he's not new to the Fisk arrival procedures. English did not appear to be his first language, though his English language skills seemed excellent and were not likely a factor in the incident. Some will wonder, how could a pilot at the Fisk waypoint, flying a low-wing, retractable landing gear airplane that looks somewhat like a Bonanza, with something similar to a T-tail, not recognize they are being addressed by the controller team, describing it just like that? Did Raphael, the commander pilot, not respond to Fisk approach's instructions because he mistook the earlier instructions for the blue Cirrus SR-22 as being for him and his commander? Or did he mistake the instructions for us and STARHAWK also over the Fisk waypoint and just behind him? Pilots can be confused when the airplane descriptions provided by controllers are similar to their own aircraft and they are close to the Fisk waypoint but beyond 1 nautical mile, especially when one makes allowances for the accuracy of controllers on the ground, visually estimating an airplane's distance from the Fisk waypoint. The commander pilot was flying this visual arrival solo, perhaps with his focus outside and not with onboard navigation aids. He did not have a precise awareness of his location. And since he split from the railroad tracks following Highway 44, to the controllers at Fisk he may have appeared to be closer than he was. So maybe he disregarded their calls because the distances were not close enough to what he was seeing on his nav system. Or did he confuse the instructions for the Cirrus ahead of him over Fisk when he was 2.5 miles from Fisk, described as maybe Commander or a Cherokee, and a blue nose as being for him? What conclusions can be drawn from this Fisk arrival incident? One can conclude it can sometimes be difficult and even impossible for controllers at Fisk to visually identify, confirm contact, and get instruction compliance from arriving aircraft. How common is it for airplanes to fly the Fisk arrival and not recognize and respond to instructions from the Fisk control team? In my research and review of other Fisk arrival videos and their viewer comments, both in flight and on the ground at the Fisk approach control station, it's not that unusual. Is it pilots not recognizing they are at the Fisk waypoint and likely being addressed? Or is it confusion in recognizing controller team aircraft descriptions based on what they're seeing from the ground through binoculars? Is it pilot distractions, radio problems, airplane antenna dead zones, pilot task saturation, or who knows what? Whatever responsibility can be allocated to the pilots, most would agree that AirVenture's ATC Visual Aircraft ID system is problematic and can be difficult for controllers and pilots. So it's no surprise there can be system failures such as this one we experienced. And even when all is working well, the inherent ambiguity of the visual ID procedures creates an added steady-state tension for pilots and controllers, especially during critical phases like crossing the Fisk waypoint and receiving tower landing instructions. What can be learned from all this? Are AirVenture's traditional visual identification procedures ready for a 21st century improvement? It is almost 5 years now since ADS-B surveillance requirements for most USA airspace has resulted in ADS-B capability now installed in most aircraft. Use ADS-B for aircraft ID and tracking. Is it time for a new era where all AirVenture ATC mainly relies on its own ADS-B aircraft surveillance data to identify arriving aircraft and call out ATC instructions to pilots by aircraft registration numbers, the normal way? Can we let go of this endearing, traditional, and nostalgic visual identification and control of aircraft for AirVenture's procedures where it would be most beneficial? I think most would agree this would be much easier for the controllers and pilots and lower the overall level of tension inherent in flying and controllers directing AirVenture's current ATC procedures. Wing rock acknowledgements. Does this mean the AirVenture tradition and famous airplane wing rock acknowledgement would be retired? I don't think so. For the high volume of traffic being handled, we still need to free up controller communication time by not requiring pilot radio acknowledgements of instructions in most situations. Incorporating modern ADS-B tracking technology in AirVenture ATC should still include the traditional wing rock acknowledgement, by having pilots confirm their aircraft ID in receipt of any instructions. This will still save valuable radio airtime, enable the higher traffic volumes necessary. With the comprehensive adoption of ADS-B traffic surveillance technology by ATC, an airplane arriving at the Fisk waypoint may sound something like this.
26.6 if you're on the left base already. Got a land there, 1 Tango Foxtrot, half mile southwest Fisk, rock your wings for me. Good, rock, turn right, and you start your descent down to 1,800 and start slowing her down when you get a chance. And you can, in the left base runway 36, March out now 126.6. Thanks for the help today, sir.
Hey, thank you. Great job.
Thanks.
The suggestion to use ADS-B data for aircraft identification is not just for Fisk approach control. All AirVenture controllers, Fisk approach, in the tower and on the MooCals would call out aircraft by their registration numbers and receive instruction acknowledgements by wing rocking. And with the aircraft type information included in ADS-B data, it will be much easier to recognize when they are handling a particularly fast aircraft and adjust for them as necessary, as described in suggestion number 2. What about accommodations for aircraft without ADS-B? Of course, there are still some aircraft not ADS-B equipped. An exact number is difficult to find. Some data indicates about 70% are ADS-B equipped, so we have around 30% without ADS-B. Here are some implementation options that come to mind to accommodate non-ADS-B equipped aircraft flying into AirVenture. The most strict would be to require ADS-B out for all aircraft AirVenture arrivals and operations at the Oshkosh Airport, with non-ADS-B aircraft to land at reliever airports Fond du Lac, Appleton, or Green Bay. A more accommodating option would be to require non-ADS-B aircraft to report by radio their arrival over the Ripon waypoint on a special frequency being monitored by Fisk approach control. So Fisk approach can know they are inbound, know their ID and type, and be better prepared to identify visually the non-ADS-B aircraft in the mix of other airplanes and direct them by reference to their IN number. Here's an example pilot report crossing the Ripon waypoint.
Cessna 9477 Alpha, Cessna 140, Ripon inbound, low track, color blue and white, no ADS-B.
This pilot report alerts Fisk approach controllers to be prepared for a non-ADS-B aircraft on the low track 6 minutes from the Fisk waypoint, or for a high track, it would be 4 minutes from Fisk. Another option is to provide a special time frame early each day for non-ADS-B aircraft to fly the Fisk arrival. What about the equipment AirVenture ATC will need? I understand ADS-B data is being used in a limited capacity by AirVenture Air Traffic Control. For more comprehensive use, it should be relatively simple and cost-effective to equip each 4-person AirVenture ATC control team with ADS-B tracking data. At a minimum, one can imagine just a simple large display laptop computer and access to the FAA's ADS-B data stream, or even just a subscription to any of a number of commercially available ADS-B networks, such as Flight Radar 24 and ADS-B Exchange. The remote locations such as Fisk Approach and the MooCals can connect their laptops to the internet by mobile phone-enabled high-speed hotspots. This should be relatively inexpensive and effective. That's all 10 suggestions for AirVenture air traffic control procedure refinements based on our STARHAWK exploration flights into Oshkosh AirVenture. Number 1. Use ADS-B data for aircraft identification and communications. Number 2, traffic pattern, downwind, offset distances, and controller instructions to pilots. Number 3, pilot aborts, breakouts of the arrivals. Number 4, warbird arrival, eligibility criteria. Number 5, Fisk airspace, temporary flight restrictions, TFRs. Number 6, Fisk arrival, high track, low track merge. Number 7, add Fisk arrival, follow railroad tracks waypoint. Number 8, flight path from Fisk waypoint to south runways must be south of Fisk Avenue. Number 9, clarify base turn limits for runways 18 left and right landing patterns. And finally, number 10, arrival ATIS unavailable at distant Fisk starting points. How helpful might these changes be? I hear some pilots say flying into AirVenture is chaotic, crazy, and dangerous. It discourages them from attending AirVenture, or at least motivates them to arrive very early or late, or flying to other airports in the area. I sincerely believe these suggested changes to AirVenture's ATC procedures will make flying to and from the annual AirVenture conventions easier and safer for pilots and controllers. Some of the suggested changes could even save lives. As the annual AirVenture conventions continue to grow in popularity and attendance, incorporating these changes will make procedures easier to follow, lower tension levels for pilots and controllers, increase ATC system capacity, and encourage more pilots to fly into AirVenture, and they'll just make it more fun. Let me know what you think. Do you have suggestions for improving AirVenture's ATC system? Please post your thoughts in the comments section below. See you at Oshkosh.
26.6 if you're on the left base already. Gonna land there, 1 Tango Foxtrot, half mile southwest pitch. Rock your wings for me. Good, rock, turn right, and you can start your descent down to 1,800 and start slowing her down when you get a chance. And you can, in the left base runway 36, Mar Tower now 126.6. Thanks for the help today, sir.
Hey, thank you. Great job.
Thanks.
See that traffic there? Red square, red square. Help me find the red square. I see it. It's like in the middle there. And retrim in here. This red square is pretty far down there.
Which runway?
36 right.
Altitude not available.
How are we looking on traffic?
All aircraft
Looking
inbound
good.
to Fisk. Continue to follow the east-west road. Maintain
Okay.
1,800.
There.
Use caution. Also light traffic off your left.
Got speed up there.
Expect the right side, skinny runway, red square, high speed, tight to the end.
Don't load it up. Like 100 knots here. Alright, mixture's a little rich. For that red square. Okay, so that's way down there.
Wing, nice landing there. Continue to roll at high speed, tight to the end. Follow the flight man. Welcome to the show.
Gas indicator, push my prop. We got 3 green. Like 98.
He's just like one intersection ahead of you, so
Yeah,
be careful.
alright.
Got my aircraft on the right side. Once again, high speed, tight to the end. Follow the flight man. Welcome to the show.
Perfect. Nice. Now the VFR chart.
Yep.